There is a story from the life of the Buddha. He sat before a great gathering. People had traveled a long way to hear him speak. He looked at them for a while. Then he reached down and lifted a single flower. He held it up and turned it slowly in the light. And he said nothing at all. Most of the crowd was confused. They had come for words. But one person among them understood and quietly smiled. Nothing had been explained, and yet everything had been given. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The teaching was not hidden somewhere behind the flower. It was the flower itself, simply present, complete, before anyone named it or tried to understand it. The smile was the recognition that some truths are not reached through explanation. They are seen directly. The path we are about to walk is a truth of just that kind. It is not an idea to be grasped and held in the mind, but a way of meeting life, something we feel our way into rather than think our way through. Tonight we follow the way of the Tao, the way of water. Water does not fight, and it does not force. It moves around the stone. It takes the shape of whatever holds it. And over long years, without ever hurrying, it carves its way through solid rock. This way of water is the spirit of Taoism, and it became the beating heart of Zen. We are not wandering away from Zen tonight. We are walking back toward its source. So settle in. There is nothing here to achieve, nothing to fix or become. Let the body grow still. Let the breath slow on its own. Thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk. Let us begin. There is an old word at the heart of tonight's path. The word is Tao. You may also hear it pronounced Dao. Both refer to the same Chinese word. It comes from ancient China, and it is thousands of years old. It means simply the way. So, before we go any further, it helps to ask one plain question. What is the Tao? There is a famous line that opens the oldest book of Taoist wisdom, written by the sage Lao Tzu more than 2,000 years ago. It says, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The moment we put it into words, we have already lost a little of it." And this is not meant to frustrate us. It is a kind of kindness. Some things in life are known only by living them. You cannot explain the taste of cool water to someone who has never been thirsty. You cannot describe the color of the morning sky to someone who keeps their eyes closed. You can only say, "Here, look for yourself." The Tao is like that. The word itself simply means the way things move, the way a river finds the sea, the way a season turns without being told, the way your own breath rises and falls, right now, without any effort from you. The Tao is the quiet order beneath all of it, the current that everything is already floating in, whether we notice or not. In truth, we already know the Tao, even if we have never once heard the word. When you walk across a room, you do not stop to think about how to move each leg. The body simply carries you. When something startles you, your heart quickens, and then, if you let it be, it settles back to its quiet rhythm without any command from you. Your breath has risen and fallen your whole life long, through every season, without you managing a single one of those breaths. All of this is the Tao, moving quietly through you, asking for no help and offering no explanation. The way is not something far off in the high mountains. It is already flowing in your own chest, in this very breath you are taking now. And the oldest image for the Tao, the one Lao Tzu returned to again and again, is water. Look at water for a moment. Water is the softest thing there is. You can pass your hand straight through it. A small child can scatter it with one finger. It has no shape of its own. Pour it into a bowl, and it becomes the bowl. Pour it into a cup, and it becomes the cup. It never argues about where it is placed. It simply takes the form of the moment. And yet there is nothing stronger in all the world. Lao Tzu wrote, "Nothing under heaven is softer than water. Yet nothing is better at wearing down the hard and the strong." Think of a great canyon with walls of stone rising up toward the sky. What carved it? Only water, moving patiently, year after year, asking the rock for nothing, simply following its own nature downward toward the sea. The stone was hard, so in the end it cracked and gave way. The water was soft, so it remains, still flowing through the canyon it made. Lao Tzu had another line about this. He said, "The highest good is like water. It nourishes all things and does not compete with them. Water does not push to the front. It flows down to the lowest places, the places everyone else avoids, and there it gives life to the root, the field, the animal, the person. It asks for no thanks. It does its quiet work, and it moves on." Water also teaches patience. It is never in a hurry, and yet it always arrives. A single drop seems to do nothing at all. But drop after drop, over years that no one counts, it hollows a deep basin in solid stone. It does not worry about how long the work will take. It keeps to its own nature and trusts time to do the rest. So much of our striving comes from wanting the whole of a thing at once, today, by force. Water shows us that the slow and unhurried way is often the surest way of all. This is the heart of the way. Strength that does not strain. Power that never has to force. We mostly live by the opposite belief. We are taught from childhood that to get through life, we must push harder, grip tighter, and fight more. So when something blocks our path, we throw ourselves against it again and again. And often we end up worn out and aching, standing in front of a wall that has not moved an inch. The way of water offers us something gentler. When a stream meets a rock, it does not stop and declare war on the rock. It simply moves around it. It slips to the left or to the right, or rises and flows over the top and continues calmly on its way. The rock is not its enemy. The rock has become part of the river, and in time, without ever meaning to, the soft water wins anyway. There is a small thing you can try with your own hand to feel this. Take a handful of dry sand and squeeze it as hard as you can. The tighter your fist closes, the more the sand escapes between your fingers until almost none is left. Now open your palm flat and let it rest there. The sand stays. It is the same with most of what we love in this life. The harder we clutch at it, the faster it slips away. The more gently we hold it, with an open hand, the longer it remains with us. Force loses what softness keeps. An old story comes down to us from the high mountains of China. Picture a traveler journeying on foot through that high country with a few companions. After many days, the road brought them to a deep gorge where a wide waterfall spilled down from the cliffs above. The water fell a long way, and where it reached the pool below, the current ran swift and strong. It was the kind of water where no fish cared to swim, where anything that slipped in would be carried far downstream. As the travelers rested at the edge, one of them pointed toward the pool. There, out in the moving water, was a man. He was old, with long grey hair, and the current was turning him this way and that, drawing him under and lifting him up again. The companions feared for him, but the old man made no cry for help. Their leader said, "Come, let us go down to the calm water below. Perhaps we can reach him there." They walked along the bank to where the river grew quiet and wide. And there was the old man, already ashore. He sat on a warm, flat rock at the water's edge, smoothing the water from his long hair, humming softly to himself, perfectly at ease. The leader came to him, amazed. "We watched you in the falls," he said. "We feared the water had taken you. Tell me, please, is there some art to moving through water like that, where another would be lost?" The old man looked up, mild and unhurried. "An art?" he said. "No, I have no art at all." "Surely there is some skill," the leader said. "We saw what you did." The old man was quiet for a moment, finding the words. "I have lived beside this water since I was a boy. Over the years, moving through it simply became my nature. And here is the whole of it. When the water draws me down, I go down with it. When the water lifts me, I rise with it. I follow the way the water moves, and I never try to force my own way upon it. I let myself be led. That is the only reason I come to no harm." He smiled at them. "If I struggled against the water would win, for it is far stronger than I am. So I do not struggle. I let go. And the very current that might have carried me away instead carries me gently home." The one who fights the current is worn out by it. The one who moves with the current is carried by it. This does not only happen in water. It happens in a life. This shows up in the most ordinary parts of a life. A man loses the work he had counted on for years. For months afterward, he does nothing but rage against it, turning it over and over, replaying how unfair it was, refusing to accept that the door has truly closed. All of his strength pours into a door that will not open again, and so he has none left over for the doors that might. Another man meets the very same loss. He feels the same grief, just as deeply. But after a time, he turns and looks at where the river of his life is actually flowing now. And he begins, gently, to follow it. Often he finds himself carried somewhere he never would have chosen and never would have reached if that first door had stayed open. So much of our suffering comes from fighting the current. We meet a moment we did not choose, and everything inside us tightens and says no. This should not be happening. I will not accept this. And so we struggle against the water, and it tires us, and we grow more weary and more afraid with every passing hour. The old man shows us a different way. He neither fights the water nor goes slack in it. He meets it exactly as it is and moves with it, feeling for where it wants to carry him. There is real strength in this. It is the strength of someone who has stopped pouring their energy into what cannot be changed and has saved it instead for what can. Lao Tzu offers one more image. He once asked a simple question. Imagine a pool of water that has been stirred up, thick with mud and silt, so cloudy you cannot see your own hand beneath the surface. How do you make it clear again? You cannot reach in and pull the mud out. You cannot scrub the water clean. And if you stir it harder, hoping to help, it only grows muddier. There is just one way. You let it be still. You wait. And slowly, on its own, the mud settles to the bottom and the water turns clear. The mind is very much like that pool. When it is troubled and churning, we want to fix it by force. We try to think our way out, to push the worry down, to wrestle ourselves into calm. But the harder we stir, the cloudier it all becomes. Stillness is what clears the water. It asks for no effort and no force, only the patience to let things settle on their own. There is a single phrase at the very center of this teaching. In the old language, it is called Wu Wei. It is often translated as non-action or as effortless action. Wu Wei does not mean doing nothing, and it does not mean lying down and letting life wash over you. It means acting without forcing. It means doing what the moment truly asks, in harmony with the way things already are, instead of straining against them. Think of a sailor on the open sea. A wise sailor does not fight the wind. He cannot. The wind is far stronger than he is. So instead he reads it, and he sets his sail, and he lets that same wind carry his boat to places he could never reach by rowing alone. He is not passive. He is awake and watching and working with great care. But he is not forcing anything. He has joined his small effort to a power far larger than himself, and so he travels far while hardly growing tired. The same shows in a knot pulled tight in a cord. Yank at it in frustration, and it only pulls harder and tighter until it will not move at all. Loosen it slowly, following the way the cord wants to give, and it falls open almost by itself. The knot did not need more force. It needed less. So much of life is like that knot. We pull harder when what the moment was asking of us all along was to soften our grip. That is Wu Wei. That is the way of water. We will return to it many times on this path because it is the quiet secret hidden underneath everything else we will speak of. And this way of water is not only the Tao, it lives at the very heart of Zen. When the teaching of the Buddha reached China long ago, it blended with the way of the Tao, and from that meeting, Zen was born. So the stillness of Zen carries the flowing of the Tao inside it. The bare simplicity, the love of nature, the trust in things as they are. When we sit with the way of water tonight, we are not leaving Zen behind. We are drinking from the spring that Zen itself came from. So how do we begin to live this in a real and ordinary way? We can start very small. Tonight, simply notice one place where you are pushing the river. One thing you have been straining against that will not move for all your straining. Perhaps it is a worry about tomorrow that no amount of turning it over in the mind will solve. Perhaps it is a feeling you wish you did not have. Perhaps it is only the simple truth that the day is over now and cannot be lived again. You do not have to fix it. You only have to notice the pushing and gently set it down. Let your hands open. Let the breath move on its own, the way it always has, without your help. For just one moment, stop trying to row and let the current hold you. This is not surrender, and it is not weakness. It is the deepest kind of trust. It is choosing to believe that the current of your own life, like the current of any river, knows how to carry you, if only you will stop fighting it long enough to feel which way it is flowing. You might feel, as you do this, a small voice insisting that if you stop pushing, everything will fall apart. That voice has been with most of us a long time. You do not need to argue with it. Let it speak, and let the breath go on flowing underneath it, soft and unforced. The breath does not need your permission, and never has. The river was carrying you long before you thought to reach for the oars. Nothing in nature strains to be what it is. The water does not try to flow. The grass does not try to grow. The breath does not try to rise. They simply follow their own nature, and so the whole world unfolds. And tonight, in this, so can you. Take a slow moment here. Let one long breath move through you, and feel the body ease where it rests. There is no hurry, and nowhere else you need to be. We will pick up the path again shortly. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. This single line has been passed down in Zen for many hundreds of years. Say it slowly, and something in the chest begins to loosen. Sitting quietly, doing nothing. Spring comes. The grass grows by itself. At first it can sound like an excuse for idleness. But inside those few words is one of the oldest truths there is. The grass does not need our help to grow. Spring does not need to be hurried along. Many of the most important things in a life happen on their own, in their own time, and the best we can do is to stop standing in their way. Think for a moment of all that is unfolding right now, with no effort from you at all. Rain is falling somewhere on a far hillside. A seed you will never see is splitting open under the dark soil. The whole turning world is going about its work, and not one part of it is waiting for your permission. And yet, so much of our time is spent trying to push the spring to come faster. Why do we do it? Often it is fear, wearing the clothing of effort. We are afraid that if we stop pushing, nothing will happen at all. We are afraid the good thing will never come unless we force it, and the hard thing will never end unless we fight it. So we grip and strain and hurry. But notice how rarely the hurry actually helps. Bread does not bake faster because we keep opening the oven. A traveler does not arrive any sooner because we pace the road and watch for him. Most of what we treasure in a life ripens slowly, on a clock that was never ours to set. This story is set long ago, in the green rice country of an old land. In a valley of terraced fields there lived a farmer who could not abide waiting. He spoke fast, and walked fast, and ate fast. When the other villagers rested in the shade at midday, he would pace the muddy edge of his field, frowning down at his young rice plants. Each morning he knelt at the water's edge and measured the shoots against his fingers. And each morning they seemed no taller than the day before. An old woman who had farmed the next field for 50 years watched him with a small smile. "The rice grows in its own time," she told him. "You cannot teach it to hurry." "There must be a quicker way," he answered. "I cannot just sit and do nothing while my neighbor's fields race ahead of mine." That night he lay awake, turning the problem over and over. And near dawn an idea came to him that seemed so clever he laughed aloud in the dark. If the shoots were too short, then he would make them taller with his own two hands. So in the grey light of morning he waded into the paddy, bent down, and took hold of the first young plant. He drew it gently upward, just a little, until it stood higher out of the mud. Then the next, and the next. There were thousands of them, and the work bent his back and rubbed his hands raw, but he did not stop until every shoot in the field stood tall. By dusk, he looked out over his work, and his heart swelled with pride. Taller than the old woman's field now, he thought. He went home and told his son what he had done. "I have found the secret at last," he said. "Today I helped every single plant in the field grow taller." The boy's face fell, and he ran out toward the fields without a word. But the rice had already begun to droop. Lifted from the soil, the tender roots could no longer reach the water that fed them. By the next morning, the field that had stood soft and green was pale and bowed low. In his great hurry to help it grow, the farmer had loosened the whole crop from the earth that held it. It is easy to smile at the farmer, but many of us do the very same thing in ways we do not notice. We pull at our own young shoots. We meet a sorrow and demand that it be gone by morning. We try something new and expect to be skilled at it within a week. We want a friendship to be deep before it has had the months to deepen, the hurt to be healed before it has had time to mend, the wisdom to be ours before we have lived the years that bring it. And when life refuses to move as fast as we wish, we reach in and tug at the roots, and then we wonder why things wilt in our hands. Lao Tzu wrote a line that turns our hurry on its head. He said, "The Tao does nothing, and yet nothing is left undone. Nothing is forced, and still everything is accomplished. The seed becomes the tree. The river finds the sea. The morning arrives without being summoned. Not because anyone strained to make it happen, but because that is simply how things are, each unfolding in its own season. There is great relief in this, if we let it reach us. So much of our tiredness comes from the belief that everything depends on our pushing. Set that weight down, even for one night, and notice that the world keeps turning without being carried on your shoulders. Picture another farmer beside that first one. She plants her seeds and waters them, and then she lets the earth do what the earth has always known how to do. She pulls a weed when a weed appears. She carries water through the dry weeks. But she does not stand over the field demanding that it grow, and she does not dig up her seeds each morning to check on them. She does her part, and she leaves the rest to soil and rain and time. When autumn comes, her harvest comes in heavy and gold, while her hurried neighbor stands in a bare and ruined field. The Buddha pointed to this same patience. Drop by drop, he said, the water jar is filled. The wise person gathers goodness little by little, not in one great rush, but in 1,000 small and unremarkable moments. There is no other way for a jar to fill, and there is no other way for a life to deepen. And so the question we carry begins to soften. Instead of asking how we can make a thing happen faster, we begin to ask what is truly ours to do today and what can be left to time. The first question wears us down. The second sets us loose. We still plant. We still carry water. But we stop standing over the soil with our worry, as though worry were a kind of sunlight. To live this way asks a kind of trust that does not come easily. We are so used to being the ones in charge, the ones who must make everything happen, that handing even a little of it back to life can feel like falling. But it is the opposite of falling. It is being held at last. We spend years certain that if we ever loosen our grip, the whole thing will come apart. And then, in some tired hour, we finally do loosen it, and we find that the ground was beneath us the entire time. Now, this teaching is an easy one to mistake. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, can sound as though it means we should drift through our days and never lift a hand. That is not it at all. There is a difference between doing nothing and being nothing, between stillness and absence. The old Taoist teachers were careful never to confuse the two. One they called non-action. The other was mere inaction. Inaction is withdrawal. It is turning away, not caring, letting things slide because we cannot be troubled to meet them. There is no peace in it, only a kind of numbness. We have all tasted that numbness. It is the evening spent staring at nothing, too flat even to rest. It is the conversation we avoid for months because facing it feels like too much. It is calling our coldness peace, when really we have only stopped caring. But that is not the stillness we are speaking of. Real stillness is wide awake. It was a person seated calmly at a window, fully present to the falling rain, fully alive, simply not thrashing about. The difference is not in how much we move. It is in whether we are truly here. Non-action is something altogether different. It is staying awake and open and letting the right response rise on its own, instead of forcing one out of old habit or fear. Sometimes that response is to wait. And sometimes the truest, most natural thing to do is to act clearly and without hesitation. The stillness was never meant to be in the hands. It lives in the heart behind them. You can feel this difference in the smallest moments. Someone speaks a sharp word to us. In the space of a single breath, two paths open. On one, we react. The old habit fires before we have even chosen it. A sharp word jumps back out of our mouth, and in seconds, a small spark has become a blaze. On the other path, we feel the sting, and we pause, only for a heartbeat, and in that pause there is room. From that room, something wiser can answer. Perhaps a calm question. Perhaps nothing at all. The provocation was exactly the same. The pause made all the difference. That pause is nearly the whole of it. To react is the mind running along its old grooves. To respond is to meet this moment as it actually is, freshly, and to let our answer come from there. One leaves us tangled. The other leaves us free. There once was a woman who walked a long pilgrimage to study with a teacher known far and wide for his kindness. She had taken the teaching of gentleness so deeply to heart that she had come to believe a peaceful person must never refuse anyone, never resist, never say no to anything at all. One day she came back from the market town shaken and upset. On the crowded road, a large man had seized her by the arm and tried to pull her toward his stall, pressing her to buy his goods, and would not let go. She had been too flustered to do anything but stand frozen until a passing cart drew his attention and she slipped free. She told her teacher the whole story, expecting him to praise her for keeping the peace, for not pushing back. He listened to every word with great care. When she had finished, he was still for a moment. Then he said, "With all the loving kindness in your heart, you could have lifted his hand from your arm, looked him in the eyes, and walked on." She was taken aback. "But I thought we were never to push against anything." "To lift a hand from your arm is not violence," he answered. "It is honesty. To yield does not mean letting yourself be dragged wherever another person wishes to take you. You can be soft and still keep to your own path. The question is never only what you do. It is the heart you do it from. Act from fear, and even your kindness turns sour. Act from love, and even a firm refusal stays kind." Many of us carry some version of that woman's confusion. We believe that to be calm we must be passive, that to be kind we must never disappoint a soul. And so we let ourselves be pulled one way and then another, saying yes when we mean no, until we are worn thin and quietly bitter underneath. But real gentleness has a spine. The most loving people are not the ones who can never say no. They are the ones who can say it cleanly, without anger, because it rises from care rather than from fear. A mother does not harm her child by holding a clear boundary. A friend does not betray a friendship by speaking one honest word. Now and then, the kindest thing and the most peaceful thing is simply to act. A wall with no door is a prison, but a house with no walls is no shelter from anything. We need both. The soft and the firm are not opposites. More often they are partners, and it is the firmness that lets the softness be safe. There is an old phrase for the whole of a human life: the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. Everything that visits us, the bright mornings and the hard nights, the welcomes and the farewells, all of it. To sit quietly does not mean we feel none of this. It means we let each of these visitors arrive and stay its while and leave, without snatching at the joys to keep them forever, and without shoving the sorrows out the door before they have finished their work. Picture an old innkeeper on a mountain road, whose door stands open to every traveler. Some who arrive are laughing and full of good news, and he welcomes them in and shares their gladness. Others come in tired and grieving, and he welcomes them just the same and gives them a warm seat by the fire for as long as they need it. He does not bar the door against the sad ones, and he does not chain the happy ones to their chairs so they can never leave. He lets them come, and he lets them go, and his inn stays open and at peace through all of it. A life can be lived like that inn. Each feeling that arrives is a guest passing through. Not one of them is the owner of the house. The grass grows by itself. The seasons turn without our help. And our own lives, if we can loosen our grip even a little, know how to unfold as well. Our task is not to force the garden. It is to care for it well, to act when love asks us to, and the rest of the time, to trust the deep and patient intelligence that has been growing things far longer than any of us has been alive. In the days ahead, you might begin to notice the places where you are tugging at your own shoots. The plan that simply needs more time. The person who is changing at their own pace and not at yours. The grief, or the mending, that cannot be hurried however much you wish it could. And instead of reaching in to pull at the roots, you might let it be and let it grow. Here and there you may notice the opposite too. A moment when peace does not mean staying silent, but speaking. When the gentle thing and the firm thing turn out to be the same thing. In those moments you can act from a settled and open heart, and that is the way, as much as any stillness is. So this is not about doing less for its own sake. It is about laying down the needless pushing, the tugging at roots, the forcing of what was always going to arrive in its own good time. What remains, once the forcing falls away, is not emptiness. It is a clear and steady kind of action, and beneath it, a deep rest. The grass is growing tonight, in fields all across the world, and not a single blade of it is straining. Something in us knows how to live the same way. We are only remembering it. Stay still for a breath or two. Nothing to reach for, nothing to solve, only the body settling where it is. When it feels right, we will carry on. begin with a seeker who traveled a great distance to study with a teacher famous for the depth of his wisdom. When at last he arrived, he made a single request. "Master, write for me the highest teaching you know, but write it in one word only, so that I may carry it with me always." The teacher took up his brush, dipped it in ink, and wrote one word upon the page. "Attention." The seeker looked at it and waited for more. None came. He frowned. "That is all? I have walked for many days to reach you. Surely the highest teaching is something grander than a single word." The teacher took up the brush again, and beneath the first word he wrote, "Attention." "Attention." The seeker grew restless. "I do not understand. What does this word even mean?" And the teacher wrote once more, "Attention means attention." The seeker had come expecting something complicated, something hidden and hard to reach, that only the wise could grasp. What he received instead was almost too plain to believe. Be here. Pay attention. That was the whole of it. We tend to assume that anything truly deep must also be complicated, that peace must lie at the end of some long and difficult road, behind many locked doors. And so we overlook the simple things sitting in plain sight. But the great teachers, in every age, have pointed the other way, back toward the plain, back toward the simple, back to the ordinary moment we keep hurrying past. It can be hard to trust something so plain. A simple answer feels too easy, as though we must be missing the real and harder truth hidden somewhere behind it. But the difficulty was never in understanding the teaching. A child can understand it. The difficulty is in living it, in actually returning to this one moment, again and again, when the mind would so much rather be anywhere else. The teaching is simple. The living of it is the work of a lifetime. And that is no discouragement. It means the whole of the path is open to us in any moment we choose to begin. The path we have been walking, the way of water, is a simple one too. Water does not complicate itself. It meets only what is in front of it. And a human life, when it grows simple in this way, grows clear. The trouble is that our minds have become crowded. We rarely do one thing at a time anymore. We eat while we worry. We walk while we plan. We listen to a friend with half an ear while the rest of us is already rehearsing tomorrow. We are forever in two places at once, which means we are never wholly in any single place at all. And this frays us in a way we can scarcely name. We reach the end of our days tired, without quite knowing what it was that tired us. We have grown almost afraid of the empty moment. The instant a small gap opens, a breath of stillness with nothing in it, we hurry to fill it. We reach for something to look at, something to do, some worry to turn over. Somewhere along the way we came to believe that more is always better. More tasks, more things, more plans, more noise. But a life piled high with more is not a fuller life. It is only a heavier one. And underneath all the noise, the thing we were truly hungry for was a little space. Let us turn to an old mountain town and to a master carpenter who lived there. He was known for two things. His work was beautiful beyond compare, and he never appeared to be in a hurry. While other craftsmen rushed and sweated and still fell behind, he worked at an unhurried pace, and yet his pieces were always finished on the very day he had promised them. A young apprentice came to learn from him, and this puzzled the boy more than anything else. One afternoon he could hold the question in no longer. "Master," he said, "the others work twice as fast as you do, and still they are always late, and their work comes out rough. You are never in a hurry, and yet you are never behind, and what you make is flawless. How can this be? The old carpenter set down his plane and considered it. It is no secret, he said at last. When I cut the wood, I only cut the wood. When I measure, I only measure. When I join one piece to another, that joining is the only thing in the whole world. I do not measure the next board while my saw is still in this one. I do not fret about the doorway while I am shaping the leg of a stool. And so I never have to do a thing twice. The others are quick, but their minds are in 3 places at once, and a mind in 3 places lets things fall. A mind resting in one place does not. He picked up his plane again. When you give the whole of yourself to the work in your hands, he said, there is no need to rush, because there is nowhere else you are trying to be. There is a deep peace in this, and most of us have tasted it without ever marking it as something special. Think of a time you were so absorbed in something simple that you forgot yourself completely. Kneading dough, mending a torn garment, turning the soil of a garden with your bare hands. The mind grew still, not because you forced it still, but because at last it had only one thing to hold. The hours passed without weight. That is no small thing. That is the mind doing what it was made for, resting in one thing at a time. Our scattered days cost us more than we know. When we try to do 3 things at once, we do not truly do 3 things. We do one thing 3 times poorly, and we feel pulled apart besides. But when we give ourselves wholly to the single act in front of us, even the dullest task becomes a kind of rest. The dishes become only the warm water and the bowl in the hands. The walk becomes only the feet and the road. There is nothing left over to worry with, because the worry needs spare attention to live on, and we have given it none. This changes how we might see our own restlessness. We tend to think we are tired because we have done too much. Sometimes that is so, but just as often we are tired because we did everything in pieces, half here and half elsewhere, and the mind never got to settle into anything at all. A single hour given fully to one task can leave us more rested than a whole afternoon spent darting between 5. It is not always the amount of work that wears us thin. It is the dividedness. There is an old understanding that the simple is not reached by adding, but by taking away. A carver was once asked how he had made the figure of a bird so lifelike from a rough block of wood. He said he had done very little. He had only cut away everything that was not the bird. The bird had been waiting inside the wood the whole time, and his work was not to add a single feather, but to remove all that hid it. A peaceful life takes shape in much the same manner. We do not arrive at it by piling on new practices and possessions and plans. We come to it by setting down, little by little, what we never needed, until what was always underneath can finally show itself. The clutter was never the treasure. The treasure was whatever the clutter had been burying. Now there is one thing about this simplicity that is easy to misread. To live simply does not mean to live carelessly. It is not a shrug at the world. It does not mean we stop caring about things and let them all be done halfway. If anything, the truth runs the other way. To be simple is to bring our full care to each small thing, instead of scattering ourselves thin across 100 things at once. There once lived a teacher who was loved for the plainness of his life. He owned almost nothing. He desired almost nothing. His students admired how little the world seemed able to trouble him. One morning a few of them walked with him through the market, and they were surprised by what they saw. At the vegetable stall, their teacher took his time. He looked carefully over the greens. He set aside the wilted leaves and chose the freshest. He weighed the price fairly in his mind and paid exactly what was right, no more and no less, giving the whole small exchange his complete attention. One student could not hide his confusion. "Master," he said, "you teach us to want little, to hold the things of the world lightly. Yet here you stand, studying each bunch of greens as though it were a matter of great weight." The teacher smiled. "To want little is not to care for nothing," he said. "To live simply is not to be a simpleton. A simple life is not a careless one. It is a life lived with full attention, even here, even now, even over a humble bunch of greens. If a thing is worth doing at all, it is worth the whole of me while I do it. That is not the opposite of simplicity. That is simplicity itself." This is the part we so often miss. We imagine that a simple life must be a dull or an empty one. But a simple life, lived with full attention, is the very opposite of empty. It is full to the brim. Each ordinary act, given our whole presence, becomes complete in itself, needing nothing added to it. A meal eaten slowly, tasted with real attention, nourishes more than a feast bolted down while reading and talking and planning all at once. A short walk taken with open eyes gives more than a long journey we drift through half asleep. The richness was never in the size of the thing. It was in how present we were while it lasted. The same holds for the time we share with one another. We can sit across from someone for a whole hour and carry away nothing because we were elsewhere the entire time, half listening, half rehearsing our reply. Or we can give a person 5 minutes of our complete and undivided attention, and they will feel more truly met than in a year of half-present company. To be fully here with another is one of the kindest things we can offer, and it costs us nothing but the willingness to set everything else down for a while. The Buddha said, in the verses of the Dhammapada, that better than 1,000 hollow words is the single word that brings peace. 1,000 scattered, half-meant things on one side, and on the other, one thing done wholly and well. We spend so much of our lives chasing after the 1,000. The peace was always waiting in the one. And here is the quiet mercy of it. We do not have to go anywhere to find this. We do not need a different life, a far-off mountain, a perfect season, with nothing to do. The simple moment is already here, 100 times a day, in the most ordinary acts we have. We were only too busy to notice it. Living simply also means learning to want less, and there is a freedom in that which is hard to describe until you have tasted it. So much of our wanting is really a kind of weight in disguise. Each thing we feel we must have, must keep, must protect, becomes one more cord tying us to the ground. A house full of treasures is also a house full of locks and worries. The person who has learned to want little is not poorer for it. He is lighter. He moves through his days unburdened, because there is so much less he is afraid to lose. Lao Tzu said it plainly. He who knows he has enough is rich. Not the one who owns the most, but the one who has set down the endless need for more. Notice how the two halves of this fit together. When we are no longer straining after more, there is suddenly room to be present with what we already hold. The wanting and the rushing were always feeding one another. Set down the wanting, and the rushing eases on its own. What remains is enough, and the simple attention to enjoy it. You may have felt a small taste of this after clearing out a crowded room or an overfull cupboard. For a long time the clutter sat there, quietly pressing on you, a weight you had stopped even noticing. Then it was gone, and the room could breathe again, and somehow you could breathe in it too. The mind works no differently. When we stop cramming every hour and every surface and every spare corner of our attention, a kind of space opens within us. And it is in that space, and nowhere else, that peace finds room to settle. The path, then, is not somewhere far away. It is beneath our feet right now, in the plainest moments of the day. Shunryu Suzuki, who carried Zen to the West, once said that Zen is not some special excitement, but simply complete attention to our ordinary, everyday life. The washing of a single bowl, the sweeping of a floor, a cup of tea, actually tasted while we drink it. Nothing needs to be added to these things. We kept trying to climb toward peace, when all the while it was waiting in the simple act right in front of us, asking only that we show up for it. The whole of the way can be lived in one ordinary act if we are truly there for it. You do not need to change a single thing about your life to begin. You might simply choose one ordinary act tomorrow, something you usually rush through without a thought, and give it the whole of yourself. Drink your morning cup as though it were the only thing happening anywhere. Wash one dish as if it were the most worthy task in the world. Walk to your door slowly enough to feel your own feet meeting the ground. You may find, in that one small act of full attention, a peace you have been chasing in far more complicated places. And when the mind wanders off, as every mind does, there is no need to scold it. You simply notice that it has drifted, and you bring it back, as many times as it takes, to the warm cup, the clean bowl, the floor beneath your feet. That returning over and over without blame is not a failure of the practice. It is the practice. There is nothing more to it than that, and nothing less. Let the words settle for a moment. Notice the breath moving in and out, all on its own, and let the shoulders come down. There is no need to hurry on. We will continue whenever you are ready. There was once a man who had spent his whole life in study. He had read the old texts until he knew them by heart. He had sat at the feet of teachers in many lands. He had even begun to teach others, and students gathered to hear him speak. From the outside he seemed wise, but in his own heart he carried a private ache, because he knew that for all his learning, he had never truly touched the thing the words were pointing toward. He understood a great deal about the truth. He had not yet tasted it. One day, word reached him that the Buddha was staying in a village many weeks of walking away. Something in him knew he could not let this pass. He left his students, left his books, and set out on foot. He walked through heat and through rain, over hills and across wide rivers for the better part of a season, until at last, footsore and thin, he came to the village. He asked where he might find the Buddha, and was told the teacher had gone out among the houses to gather his morning meal. "Wait here," the others told him. "He will return before long, and he will be glad to teach you." But this man had already waited his whole life. He could not bear to wait another hour. He hurried into the narrow streets and found the Buddha there, walking with his bowl, going quietly from door to door. The man went straight to him and bowed low. "Please," he said, "teach me. I have come a very long way. None of us knows how many days we are given. Teach me now, before this moment is gone." The Buddha looked at him with kindness. "This is not the time," he said. "I am gathering food. Come back after, and we will sit, and I will teach you." But the man asked again, and then a second time, and a third. "Please," he said, "who knows what tomorrow holds? Teach me now." Seeing the depth of the man's longing, the Buddha agreed. He set down nothing, and he sat nowhere. He simply stood there in the street, the bowl still in his hands, and he gave the man one short teaching. It was only a handful of words, and yet folded inside them was the whole of the path. "In what is seen," he said, "let there be only the seen. In what is heard, only the heard. In what is sensed, only the sensed. In what is thought, only the thought. Nothing more than that." The man stood very still, and as the words settled into him, something he had been chasing for 40 years came home. He understood at last. Not the idea of it, the thing itself. For 40 years he had searched through books and across whole countries, certain the answer must lie somewhere far off, hidden and difficult to reach. And in the end it was nearer than his own breath. It had been with him the entire time, in every sight and sound of every ordinary day. He had only been looking past it, the way we look past the air we breathe. It is such a small teaching. In the scene, just the scene. And yet most of us almost never live there. Notice what actually happens when we see something. A face. A grey sky through the window. A pile of dishes left in the sink. In the very first instant, there is only the bare sight. But we do not stay with it for even a heartbeat. At once the mind rushes in and begins to add. This is good. This is bad. I like it. I do not. This reminds me of yesterday. This means tomorrow will be hard. Within a single second, the plain thing before us is buried under a heap of thoughts about it, and we are no longer seeing the thing at all. We are seeing our ideas of the thing. The mind does not do this to torment us. It is trying to help. Long ago, it learned that naming things and sorting them keeps us safe and saves us effort. We see a shape on the path, and the mind says snake, and we leap back, and now and then, that has saved a life. This sorting is useful, and we could not live well without it. The trouble is that it never switches off. It labels the snake, and then it goes on to label the sky, the meal, the stranger, our own worth, laying judgment over everything, including the countless things that needed no judgment at all. A good servant has slowly become the master of the house. You can hear this inner narrator if you pause and listen for it. It almost never falls silent. It remarks on the weather, on the people who pass, on how the day is going, on how we ourselves are doing, a soft running stream of approval and complaint laid over everything we meet. We are so used to its voice that we mistake it for the world itself. We believe we are seeing the morning, when really we are hearing the mind's opinion of the morning. The first step toward freedom is only to notice that the narrator is there at all, and that it is not the same thing as what stands in front of us. The teaching calls us back. In the scene, just the scene. Can we meet the grey sky as simply grey sky, before it becomes a verdict on the whole day? Can we let the dishes be only shape and water and light, before they become a complaint about our life? The sight was never the trouble. The heap we pile on top of it is where the trouble begins. There is a freshness in meeting things this way, the freshness a young child knows. A small child sees a thing plainly before she has learned all its names and uses. A puddle is not yet an inconvenience to step around. It is a shining circle of fallen sky, and clearly it is meant to be stood in. We could all see like that once. We have not lost the ability. We have only buried it beneath a lifetime of labels. And underneath, the bare and living world is still here, exactly as it was, waiting to be met again. You can taste the difference for yourself with something as small as a cup of tea. Most days we drink it while reading, or worrying, or planning the hours ahead, and we never taste it even once. But take a single sip with your whole attention, before the mind has called it good or weak or too hot, and there is only warmth and a flavor that no word can quite hold. That bare flavor, met directly, before any thought about it arrives, is what the teachers meant by meeting a thing as it is. It waits for us in the plainest moments, and it asks nothing of us but that we show up to taste it. An old tale shows how far our additions can carry us from what is actually in front of us. A man who lived at the edge of a village discovered one morning that his axe was missing. He searched the house and the yard and could not find it anywhere. The longer he searched, the more certain he grew that it had been stolen. And as he turned it over in his mind, his suspicions settled on the young man who lived next door. From that moment, everything he saw seemed to prove him right. He watched the youth go past, and the way he walked looked exactly like the walk of a thief. He listened to the young man speaking with others, and it sounded sly and guilty. The look in his eyes, the set of his shoulders, even the sound of his laughter, all of it now seemed to belong to someone hiding a crime. The man was certain. He had only to glance at his neighbor to see a thief standing plainly before him. A few days later, he climbed the wooded hill behind his house to cut some firewood. And there, leaning against a tree where he had left it and forgotten it, was his axe. It came back to him now. He had carried it up himself days earlier, set it down, and walked home without it. No one had stolen anything at all. He came down the hill, and when next he met the young man from next door, a strange thing had happened. The youth no longer looked anything like a thief. He walked and spoke and laughed, just as any honest young person might. Nothing about the neighbor had changed in all those days. The only thing that had ever changed was what the man laid over him with his own mind. We do this all the time, and mostly we never catch ourselves at it. We meet a moment, and almost before we have seen it, we have wrapped it in a story. Then we live inside the story, sure that it is simply the truth, when often it is only something we ourselves have added. Even a single word can stand between us and the world. We glance at a tree and think tree, and having named it, we look away, certain we have already seen it. But the word is not the tree. The living thing standing there, this one particular tree, with its own bark and its own leaning toward the light, no two of its leaves alike, we never really looked at. The name was enough to make us stop looking. A great deal of life slips past us in just this way, filed away under a word, while the thing itself, endlessly alive, goes unseen. So much of what weighs on us is not the bare event at all. It is the layer we lay over it. A friend does not answer our message, and within minutes, we have built a whole tale of being forgotten or disliked, when the plain fact was only this: one message, unanswered, for now. A small ache in the body becomes, in the mind, a long and frightening story about what it must mean. The thing itself was bearable. The story we built around it is what kept us awake. Think of how we replay a hard conversation long after it has ended. The conversation lasted 10 minutes, but we hold it for 10 days, running it again and again, adding lines we wish we had said, imagining what the other person must now think of us. The 10 minutes happened once. The suffering we draw from it can stretch on and on because we keep feeding it with the extra. The event is long over. Only the story remains, and we are the ones still telling it. When the Buddha said, "In the scene, just the scene," he was offering a door out of all this. Not a way to stop seeing or stop feeling, but a way to set down the heavy extra we keep adding. To let a sight be only a sight. To let a sound be only a sound. To let the unanswered message be only an unanswered message, and not a judgment on our whole worth. And we do this most of all to ourselves. We carry an old verdict about who we are, stitched together long ago from a handful of hard moments, and we wear it as though it were plain fact. I am the sort of person who always fails at this. I am too much, or I am not enough. We meet each new morning already sure of how it ends, looking at ourselves through a label we wrote years ago, when we were younger and knew far less. But we are not that label. Like the neighbor who only looked like a thief, we are a living thing, changing all the while, far larger than any old story told about us. To meet even ourselves freshly, as we actually are today, is its own kind of freedom. There is real peace in this, and real rest. Imagine how light a day might feel if we met each thing in it just as it was, without the endless commentary running underneath. The cool of water over the hands, only cool water. The voice of someone we love, only that voice, here, now. The traffic, the weather, the long slow line at the counter, only sound and sky and waiting, none of it carrying the extra weight of our verdict upon it. We would still act. We would still choose what needs choosing. But we would not be worn out by 1,000 small stories we never needed to tell. This is the same ease we have been moving toward all along. To flow with life rather than fight, it begins right here, in how we meet a single moment. When we stop arguing with what we see, there is suddenly far less to struggle against. The day grows quieter, not because anything in it has changed, but because we have stopped adding so much noise of our own. Seeing clearly in this way also helps us meet what is hard. When trouble arrives, most of our panic is not the trouble itself, but the towering story we build around it, all the ways it might spread and spoil everything. Set the story down, even for a moment, and look at what is actually here, right now, and very often, it turns out to be smaller and more workable than the mind had made it seem. We can only respond well to what we can truly see. The story blinds us. The bare facts give us solid ground to stand on. And this does not make us numb to life. It works the other way. When the inner chatter dies down, we feel more, not less. The color of the evening is brighter when we are not busy judging it. A friend's words land more deeply when we are not already half rehearsing our reply. The bare world, met directly, is richer than any tale we could tell about it. We were never adding to life with all our commentary. We were only standing in our own way. The mind will keep on offering its labels. That is simply what minds do, and there is no need to fight them. We need only notice when we have wandered off into the story and come back without scolding ourselves to what is actually here. The sight, the sound, the breath, this much, and nothing extra. You might begin to catch it here and there, in some ordinary moment. You taste your food, and you notice the mind has already raced ahead to whether it is as good as last time, instead of simply tasting what is on the tongue. You see a familiar face, and you notice you are looking at your old opinion of that person, rather than the living human being in front of you. And in the noticing, you can let the extra fall away, just for a breath, and meet the thing as it actually is. This is not a trick to be mastered or a test to be passed. It is closer to a homecoming. The plain and simple world has been here all along, underneath every idea we have laid upon it. To return to it, even for a moment, is to feel the relief of setting down a weight we had forgotten we were carrying. And it is nothing we must grip or hold on to. The very moment we notice we have drifted off into the story, the noticing itself has already carried us home. Pause here a little while, with nothing to figure out. Only this breath and this moment, just as it is. In a while, we will go on. When the mind will not settle, our first instinct is to clamp down on it. It is a familiar move. A worry starts circling, the same thought returning again and again, and we decide to force it to stop. We tell ourselves not to think about it. We push the thought down, hold it away, try to shut the door on it. And it never works. The harder a thought is shoved away, the louder it knocks to be let back in. The tighter the mind is gripped, the more it strains against the grip. It is a strange law, but a reliable one. Whatever we fight in the mind, we feed. Tell yourself with all your strength not to picture a blue horse, and a blue horse is suddenly the only thing you can see. The effort not to think a thing keeps the thing alive, because the effort itself is a kind of attention. We end up locked in a wrestling match with our own mind, and in that match, there is never a winner. Both sides are us, and both only grow more tired. There is a wiser way, and it begins with an old piece of country wisdom. Long ago, a young herder was given his first ox to look after. The animal was strong and restless, and the young man was anxious to keep it under control. So he tied it on a short rope to a post inside a small pen. But the ox would not settle. It tugged at the rope and leaned against the rails, restless and unhappy, and churned the little pen into mud. Day after day the young herder struggled with it, shortening the rope, mending the fence, growing as tired and frustrated as the animal itself. An old herder, who had kept cattle all his life, came by and watched this for a while. At last he spoke. "You are trying to hold him still," he said, "and that is exactly why he fights you. Come, let me show you something." He led the young man and the ox out of the pen and through a gate, into a wide green meadow that ran all the way to the foot of the hills. Then he simply let the animal go. The young herder cried out, certain the ox would bolt and be lost. But it did not. Set loose in all that open space, the animal walked a little way, then stopped. It lowered its head and began, calmly, to graze. It moved here and there across the meadow as the day went on, and it never strayed far, and it never ran. By evening it stood content in the tall grass, peaceful as a pond at dusk. "You see," said the old herder, "a creature hemmed into a corner will fight the fence with all its strength. Give it room enough, and it quiets on its own. You will never master him by making his world smaller. You master him by making it larger." The mind is very much like that ox. When we try to keep it in a small pen, holding it on a short rope, forbidding it to wander, it strains and fights and wears us down. But there is another way to live with a restless mind, and it is the very opposite of what we usually attempt. We give it room. This holds for our feelings as much as our thoughts. When a sadness rises and we slam the door on it, refusing to let it be felt, it does not leave. It presses harder against the door. But when we make room for it, when we let it be felt without being fought, it tends to soften and ease and pass on through. What we resist hardens. What we allow can move. We narrow our lives because we believe that control will keep us safe. If I can only get a tight enough grip on my thoughts, on my days, on the people around me, then surely nothing can go wrong. It is an understandable hope, but a clenched hand cannot hold much, and a clenched life cannot hold much either. The grip that was meant to keep us safe ends by keeping us small, and smallness turns out to be its own kind of suffering, quite apart from whatever it was we feared in the first place. The old Taoist teachers had a phrase for this: free and easy wandering. It describes a mind let loose in a wide field, allowed to roam where it will, watched over but never gripped. When we stop fighting each thought, when we let them drift across the open meadow of our awareness, a surprising thing happens. They settle by themselves. The very freedom we were so afraid to allow turns out to be what brings the peace we had been trying to force. And here is something that makes the wandering far less frightening. When you let the mind go and simply watch where it travels, you find it can only go to one of a few places. To something seen or something heard. To a smell, a taste, or a feeling in the body. Or to a thought. That is all. It is not the trackless wilderness we imagined. It is a small and knowable handful of doors, and the same few visitors pass through them all day long. Once we see this, we can let the mind roam without fear, the way the old herder could loose the ox without fear, because the field has its edges, and nothing in it can truly carry us away. This can be felt even now, in a small way. Rather than bracing against your thoughts, you might let them come and simply notice where each one lands. A sound somewhere outside, a memory, an ache in the shoulder, a plan for tomorrow. Not one of them needs to be chased, and not one needs to be shut out. You are simply the wide field across which they pass, and the field is not harmed by the weather that crosses it. Clouds gather and clouds clear, and the sky behind them remains the sky. Tao Tzu pointed to the hidden power of open space in a simple way. We shape clay to make a pot, he said, but it is the hollow inside that makes it useful. We raise walls and cut doors and windows to build a room, but it is the empty space within that we actually live in. The emptiness we tend to overlook is the very thing that holds our lives. A room crammed wall to wall with furniture is no longer a room anyone can sit in. And a life, or a mind, packed too full, leaves us nowhere to stand. Some of the most precious room we can make is the room we leave open. This is true of the people we love as well. We sometimes try to hold a person close by, drawing the fences in tight around them, with our worry, our demands, our need to know their every step. And we find, every time, that the holding is what pushes them away. A person, like any living creature, grows uneasy in a narrow pen and easy in an open field. The surest way to keep someone near is to give them room. The love that leaves space is the love that lasts. let us explore the story of an old teacher and a young student who came to him heavy with sorrow. The young man sat down and poured out his troubles, all the things that pressed on him, and he asked the teacher how he might be free of the pain. The teacher listened to every word. Then he asked the young man to bring him a handful of salt and a cup of water. When the student returned, the teacher told him to stir the salt into the cup and drink. The young man took a sip and grimaced and spat it out. "It is bitter," he said. "Far too bitter to drink." The teacher nodded. Then he rose and led the student out of the house, along a path, down to the edge of a wide mountain lake. "Now," he said, "take another handful of salt, the very same amount, and throw it into the lake." The student did. Then the teacher said, "Now drink from the lake." The young man knelt and cupped the cool water in his hands and drank. "How does it taste?" the teacher asked. "Fresh," said the student. "Clean. Do you taste the salt?" "No," he answered. "Not at all." The teacher sat down beside him at the water's edge. "The pain in your life is the salt," he said. "No more and no less. The amount of it does not change, but the bitterness you taste depends on the size of the vessel you place it in. So when the pain is great, the thing to do is not to fight the pain. It is to grow larger. Stop being a cup. Become a lake." This is the whole secret of the wide field. We rarely get to choose how much salt life pours into our open hands. The loss comes. The worry comes. The hard season comes. We cannot always make the trouble smaller, but we can widen the vessel that holds it. When our world has shrunk to the size of a cup, a single trouble fills the whole of it, and everything we taste tastes of that one thing. There are days like this, when one worry crowds out the entire sky and nothing else can be seen. But the trouble had not actually grown. Our world had narrowed around it. That very same difficulty, set inside a wider life, becomes one thing among many. Yes, there is the salt. And there is also the morning light, and the warmth of a cup in the hands, and the voice of a friend, and the long patient hills, and 1,000 other things the narrowed mind had stopped seeing. The pain is real, and we do not pretend it away. We only stop letting it be the only thing that is true. This is not the same as looking away. We do not bury the salt, or tell ourselves the water is sweet. The teacher never asked the young man to deny his pain. He asked him to grow a larger life around it. The sorrow is still there in the lake. It has simply been met by so much more that it no longer overwhelms the whole. To widen is not to escape what hurts. It is to stop standing so close to the hurt that it blocks out everything else. Time widens the field too, though we forget it while we are inside the hard hour. Nearly every trouble that once filled our whole sky has since become a single small chapter, set within a life that turned out to be far larger than that one moment. What felt at the time like the entire ocean was, in the end, a handful of salt. Even now, in the middle of it, we can remember that this hour is smaller than the life that holds it. How do we widen the field when we are caught in the small pen of a hard hour? Not by force. We can no more order the mind to feel spacious than the young herder could order the ox to be calm. But we can do small things that open a little room. We can step outside and let the eyes rest on something far away, a line of hills, a wide stretch of sky, and feel the world grow larger around the worry. We can take one slow breath that reaches all the way down and notice that even the body holds more room than we thought. We can call to mind, in the middle of the one hard thing, the many ordinary goods that are also true in the very same moment. None of this fights the trouble. It simply gives the trouble more space to float in, until it is no longer the whole of the water. The difference between these two states shows itself in the body. The narrow mind is tight. The breath goes shallow, the shoulders climb, the gaze pulls in close, and the whole self seems to clench around the trouble. The wide mind is loose. The breath drops low, the eyes lift toward the horizon, the body softens, and there is suddenly room to move. We cannot always think our way from one to the other, but sometimes we can let the body lead. Lift the eyes, lengthen the breath, ease the shoulders down, and the mind, feeling the new space around it, often follows the body out into the open. The restless mind does not need a smaller pen. It needs a wider meadow. The aching heart does not need to clamp down on its ache. It needs to grow large enough to hold that ache tenderly, alongside everything else that is also real. We spend so much effort trying to shrink our troubles. Perhaps the deeper freedom is to let ourselves grow wide, not to win the long argument with our own mind, but to set it down and step out of the small pen into a field that has no fences we are forced to defend. All through this path we have been circling one truth. That ease comes not from gripping harder, but from loosening our hold. Tonight it simply wears the shape of space. A wide field for a restless mind. A large vessel for an old sorrow. The same gentle law showing itself once more. In the days ahead, when you feel the walls drawing in, when one worry begins to fill the whole sky, you might see whether you can widen the field instead of wrestling the worry. A few slow breaths, a long look at something far off, a gentle remembering of all the other things that are also here, right now. You are not trying to force the salt out of the water. You are only letting the water grow wide enough that the salt has somewhere to disappear. None of this has to be forced. Widening is not one more task to get right. It is closer to opening a window in a stuffy room. You do not make the fresh air yourself. You only stop sealing it out, and it comes in on its own. Linger here a moment and rest in a little of that openness. Nothing to hold on to, and nothing to push away. Only space and breath. We will move on soon, though there is no rush. There is a kind of calm that is not coldness. It is a steadiness that does not depend on things going our way. It meets good news and hard news with the same open heart, not because it has stopped caring, but because it is no longer tossed about by every shift in the weather. This steadiness has a name. It is called equanimity, and it may be among the most valuable of all the qualities a person can grow. It is also one of the most misunderstood. Both the Taoist sages and the teachers of Zen returned again and again to a single image for it. Still water. Chuang Tzu wrote that when water is perfectly still, it becomes a clear mirror, so smooth it can show a person their own eyebrows and lashes. And if still water can grow that clear, he asked, how much clearer might a still mind become? A mind at rest, he said, becomes a mirror that reflects the whole world just as it is. That is the heart of where we are walking now. Not a hard, cold flatness, but a settled clarity. A surface so calm that the world can be met without shattering it into 1,000 anxious ripples. We will look at what this balance truly is, the ways we lose it, and how, little by little, a person finds the way back to it. An archer of remarkable skill once lived in a distant province. When he practiced alone, in the empty field behind his house, he was a wonder to watch. He drew the bow without strain, breathed out, and let the arrow fly, and it found the center of the target almost every time. His body knew exactly what to do, and his mind never interfered. Shooting, for him, was as natural as walking down a familiar path. One year, a great contest was announced, with judges and crowds, and a prize. In the first round, the prize was a simple clay cup. The archer stepped up and shot well, though perhaps not quite as freely as he did at home. In the second round, the prize was changed to a buckle of fine brass. As he raised the bow this time, his hands felt unsteady, and a thought crept in that had never once troubled him in the empty field. What if I miss? His arrow struck the target, but off to the side of the center. In the final round, the prize was a bar of gold. As the archer stepped forward and looked down the shaft of the arrow, his heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his arms. The faces of the crowd blurred. For a moment he seemed to see two targets swimming in front of him, and he hardly knew which was real. He drew and held and released, and the arrow sailed wide and dropped into the grass. The man who never missed at home had missed with everyone watching. Afterward, an old teacher who had seen the whole thing came and sat beside him. The archer was bewildered and ashamed. "I do not understand it," he said. "These are the same eyes. These are the same hands. At home I never miss. Here, with the gold in front of me, I could barely find the target. Where did my skill go?" "Your skill never went anywhere," the old man said. "It was exactly where it has always been. But when there was nothing to win, you were whole, and the whole of you shot the arrow. When the gold appeared, you split in two. Half of you was shooting, and the other half was already clutching at the prize and trembling at the thought of losing it. A person divided against himself cannot shoot straight. It was never your skill that failed you tonight. It was your wanting that stepped in front of it." The archer's trouble is our own, in 100 forms. We are at our best, our steadiest and most able, when we are not gripping the outcome. The moment we begin to clutch at how things must turn out, we divide ourselves, and the very wanting unsteadies the hand that was calm a breath before. It shows up almost everywhere. The words come easily when we are alone in our own kitchen, and then desert us the moment we stand to speak before a room. A game stays loose and joyful until it suddenly matters, and then the body tightens and the ease drains away. A conversation flows along until we badly want the other person to like us, and all at once not one natural thing will come to mind. In each case, the ability was there the entire time. It was the wanting, grown too large, that stepped in front of it. An old Zen verse begins with a line that repays carrying. "The great way is not difficult," it says, "for those who have no preferences." At first, that can sound impossibly high, as if we must learn to want nothing at all. But it points to something nearer and kinder than that. It does not ask us to kill our desires. It asks us to loosen the grip of the endless for and against that runs through the mind all day. The constant yes to this and no to that. The leaning toward what we crave and the bracing against what we dread. When that grip loosens, even a little, the mind settles back into balance on its own. Chuang Tzu put it in 5 plain words. When the heart is right, For and against are forgotten. This is not a call to flatten ourselves into not minding anything, to prefer warmth to cold, or kindness to cruelty, is natural and good. The trouble was never in having preferences. It is in clinging to them so tightly that our peace depends entirely on getting them. We can hope for the sun and still be all right in the rain. We can wish for the kind word and still stand steady without it. The preference remains. What loosens is our grip on it. And in that loosening, a great deal of our daily suffering quietly lets go as well. It would be easy to hear all this and imagine equanimity as something cold and flat. A person who has stopped caring, who shrugs at everything, who has gone numb in order to feel safe. But that is the very opposite of balance. That is only withdrawal wearing calm as a disguise. Real equanimity is warm and wide awake. The stillness of settled water is nothing like the stillness of ice. Picture instead a steady flame inside a sheltered lamp. It does not leap and gutter with every draught that crosses the room, and yet it is fully alight, giving its warmth and its light to everything around it. A balanced heart is like that flame. It feels the whole of life, the joy and the sorrow both, fully and tenderly. It simply is not blown out by them. A person of real balance loves deeply, grieves honestly, laughs without holding back. They are not less alive than the rest of us. They are more alive because their aliveness no longer hangs on keeping the world in one particular shape. The Buddha gave a picture of this that has lasted thousands of years. When life brings us pain, he said, it is as though we are struck by an arrow. That first arrow is the pain itself, and very often we cannot avoid it. Loss arrives. Disappointment arrives. The body aches. But then, he said, most of us reach back, take hold of a second arrow, and drive it into the same wound with our own hand. That second arrow is everything we add to the pain. The railing against what happened. The insistence that it should not be so. The fear of what it all might mean. The first arrow is the event. The second is our struggle against it. And it is usually the second that does the deeper harm. Equanimity cannot stop the first arrow. No one can. What it does is quietly set down the second. It lets the pain be painful without heaping the whole weight of our resistance on top of it. The shape of that second arrow is easy to recognize. A plan falls through, and the disappointment itself lasts only a moment, but the protest against it can last for hours. Why does this always happen to me? It should not be this way. I cannot bear it. None of that arguing changes what has already happened, and all of it adds to the ache. The broken plan was the first arrow. Each angry, frightened thought we fire after it is another and another, every one of them launched by our own hand. To meet the first arrow with equanimity is to feel it fully and then to let it be, without reaching back for the quiver. We now turn to a potter who was known across the whole region for her bowls. One morning, 2 travelers came through her workshop, and she happened to set the very same bowl before each of them in turn. The first lifted it, turned it slowly in the light, and warmed with praise. "This is the finest bowl I have ever held," he said. "You are a true master. Your name ought to be known in every city in the land." The potter bowed her head, thanked him kindly, and went back to her work. A little while later, the second traveler picked up that same bowl, frowned, and turned down the corners of his mouth. "The glaze is dull," he said. "The shape sits heavy in the hand. I have seen better than this at any roadside stall." The potter bowed her head, thanked him kindly as well, and went back to her work exactly as before. A young apprentice had watched both moments, and she could not hold her tongue. "Teacher," she said, "the first man called you a master, and you hardly smiled. The second called your work clumsy, and you hardly frowned. The same praise would have lifted me for a week. The same scorn would have wounded me for a month. How do they both pass over you like a breeze over a stone?" The potter set down her clay and wiped her hands. "When I was young," she said, "I lived on the words of others. When they praised me, I floated up. When they faulted me, I sank down. All day long I was thrown up and down by whoever had spoken last. It wore me out, and my work suffered for it, because I was shaping bowls to please their opinions instead of shaping them well. In time I learned to listen to the clay instead. I can feel when a bowl is honest and when it is not. The first man's praise did not make this bowl one bit better. The second man's scorn did not make it one bit worse. The bowl is simply what it is. Why would I rise and fall on words that change nothing about it?" Praise and blame are two of the strongest winds that blow through any life, and most of us are bent first one way and then the other by them all day long. A warm word, and we are lifted. A cold one, and we are flattened. We hand the steering of our whole mood to whoever happens to be speaking to us. And because praise and blame so often disagree with each other, we are left spun in circles, never quite sure of our own footing. And it does not stop at how we feel. The hunger for praise and the fear of blame quietly steer the whole course of a life. We take the path that will win approval rather than the one that is truly ours. We shrink ourselves to avoid criticism, or we perform for an applause that never quite satisfies. So much of what we do is shaped by the imagined verdict of other people. To find a steadier place to stand is not only more peaceful. Little by little, it hands us back our own life, to be lived from the inside rather than for the watching eyes. The potter had found a place to stand, not a place beyond all caring, but a place that did not rise and fall with the verdict of the last person to speak. She knew her own work. She listened to the clay. From that steady center she could receive a kind word gracefully and let a harsh one drift on past, because neither one was the ground beneath her feet. There is a gift in this steadiness that reaches past ourselves. A person who is not easily thrown becomes a still point that others can gather around. When everyone else is rising and falling with each new piece of news, the calm one in the room lends some of that calm to all of them. It is a relief to be near someone like that in a hard hour, a person whose steadiness makes our own panic loosen its hold. Equanimity is not a turning away from others. It may be one of the kindest things we are able to offer them. This is what settled water can do that troubled water cannot. When a pond is whipped by wind, its surface shatters into 1,000 ripples, and it can hold no clear reflection at all. Let the wind fall quiet, let the surface grow still, and that same water shows the whole sky, the moon, the birds crossing overhead, each just as it is. A settled mind is like this. It is not empty of the world. It receives the world more truly than a churning mind ever could, because it has stopped breaking everything it meets into ripples of wanting and not wanting. None of this asks us to stop feeling or to stop preferring one thing to another. We will always have our loves and our hopes. Equanimity is not the end of all that. It is simply no longer being ruled by it. It is the steadiness that lets us meet the next thing, whatever it turns out to be, without losing ourselves in it. And from that steadiness, we can move with whatever comes in the way we have been describing all along, because nothing knocks us so far over that we cannot find our feet again. There will be small chances to feel for this balance in the days ahead. A bit of praise that tempts us to float off on it. A criticism that tugs us downward. A turn of luck, good or bad, that the mind wants to seize and build a whole towering story upon. In any of these, there is room to pause and feel our own feet on the ground and let the wind pass by without leaning so far into it that we fall. We do not have to stop caring. We only have to stop being knocked over. And bit by bit, the storms grow shorter and the time it takes to find our balance again grows less, until the steadiness that once felt so rare begins to feel like home. Let everything grow still for a moment. The sounds around you, the breath, the weight of the body at rest, all of it just as it is. When you are ready, we will go on together. When a piece of real wisdom arrives, something curious happens inside us. Part of us leans toward it, eager and ready to begin. Part of us nods and means to take it up, and then quietly sets it aside for another day. And part of us, now and then, would rather wave the whole thing away. Lao Tzu noticed this long ago and set it down in a few plain lines. When the wisest among us hear of the way, he said, they take it to heart at once and begin to live by it. When the average among us hear of it, they half believe. They hold it a while, then forget it, then remember it once more. And when the most foolish hear of it, they laugh out loud. Then he added a line with a smile folded inside it. If such people did not laugh, he said, it would not be the way worth speaking of at all. At first, this sounds like a way of sorting the world into the wise and the foolish, with ourselves, naturally, counted among the wise. But it opens onto something closer to home, and far gentler. What follows is less about judging who is wise and who is foolish, and more about how we meet our own heart, with all its mixed and shifting voices, and how a little kindness in that meeting can ease a great deal. A simple story brings those words to life. Word came to a certain town of a hidden spring, high in the mountains, whose water was said to bring a deep and lasting peace to anyone who drank from it. 3 people in the town heard the same news on the same day. The first heard it and felt something stir in her chest. Without much fuss, she gathered a little food, put on her walking shoes, and set out that very morning toward the hills. She did not need to be certain. The mere chance of such a spring was enough to start her walking. The second heard it and was moved as well. Yes, he thought, I really should go and find this spring. But there was the harvest to bring in first, and then a roof to mend, and then the cold season arrived, and it seemed wiser to wait for spring. He meant to go. He never quite stopped meaning to go. The years slipped by, and the journey stayed always just ahead of him, a fine thing he would surely get to soon. The third heard the very same news and laughed out loud. A magic spring that brings peace, he scoffed. What nonsense! Peace does not come from drinking water on a mountainside. These are tales for children and fools. And he went back to his business, well pleased to have seen through it, and thought no more about it. It is tempting to hear that story and start sorting the people we know into the 3 kinds. There are the seekers, we decide, and the ones who dither, and the ones who scoff. But that is not quite the heart of it. The deeper truth, and the more useful one, is that all three of these people live inside each of us. There is a part of us that hears of something good and true and wants to set off toward it at once. There is a part that believes, but delays, and means to begin tomorrow, and keeps on meaning to. And there is a part that folds its arms and scoffs, that calls the whole thing foolish, that would rather feel clever than be moved. We are not one of these three. We are all of them gathered in a single heart, often within the same hour. All three can show up in something as ordinary as a piece of good advice. A friend suggests a change that might truly help us, and in a single breath, three answers rise at once. Yes, says the eager one, I will start today. Soon, says the second, when things settle down a little. And the third only rolls its eyes. That will never work for someone like me. Three voices, one heart, one moment. Not one of them is a stranger. Once we see this, something can soften. Most of us treat our own inner crowd as a battle to be won. We are proud of the eager seeker in us and ashamed of the one who delays, and we try to silence the one who scoffs. We split ourselves into the good parts and the bad parts, and we go to war inside our own skin. But this is a war with no winner, because every soldier in it is us. The harder we fight the parts we dislike, the more they dig in. The scoffer scoffs all the louder for being told to be still. The one who delays grows more stubborn the more it is scolded. It works the same with our feelings. The more we scold ourselves for being nervous, the more nervous we become, anxious now about the anxiety itself. The more we rage at ourselves for a low mood, the heavier it settles. Whatever part of us we attack only digs in deeper, fed by the very heat of the struggle. The first loosening usually comes not from winning the fight, but from setting down the weapons. There is another way, and it is the way of welcome. We can let the eager one be eager, and let it lead when leading is wise. But we can also turn kindly toward the one who hesitates, and listen to what it is afraid of, instead of shouting it down. We can even smile at the scoffer and notice the guarded, frightened thing standing just behind its folded arms. None of these parts is the enemy. Each is some piece of us, doing its best in the only way it knows. When we stop fighting our own crowd and begin to listen to it, the noise inside starts to settle, much as a roomful of arguing people will grow calm once someone finally hears each of them out in turn. To welcome a part of ourselves is not the same as handing it the reins. We can listen to the one who hesitates without letting it cancel the journey. We can hear the scoffer out without believing a word it says. Welcoming only means we stop treating these voices as enemies to be crushed, and start treating them as members of the household, each with something to say, not one of them the true owner of the place. Met and understood, they tend to settle. Fought and cast out, they only pound harder on the walls. There is one part of us in particular to handle tenderly, because it does so much harm while believing it helps. It is the stern, judging voice, the one that has decided exactly how a good person ought to be, and then measures us against that picture every hour and finds us lacking. It scolds us for the bright plans we never followed through on. It sneers at our own foolishness. And it does not stop with us. It looks out at everyone else as well and decides who is wasting their life, who is doing it all wrong, who falls short. This voice often sounds like wisdom. It can even sound like high standards, like devotion, like caring deeply about doing right. But underneath, it is a hard and joyless thing, and it carries no one toward peace, least of all ourselves. A heart at war with itself cannot rest, and a person forever judging others is usually just turning outward the same harsh measuring stick they have been beaten with on the inside for years. It can help to notice how differently we speak to the people we love. When a friend stumbles, we are quick with comfort. There now, anyone might have slipped there. You will find your way. When a friend confides a fear, we meet it with tenderness. Yet when we ourselves stumble, the voice that rises is rarely so kind. It is sharp and cold, and sure we should have known better. We would never speak to someone we love the way the judge speaks to us. To turn toward ourselves with even a little of that same warmth is not weakness, and it is not letting ourselves off the hook. It is closer to plain sanity, and it is usually where real change begins. The judging voice has a close cousin, and it is the voice of blame. Whenever we are unhappy, this one is quite certain that somebody else is the cause. There is a story of a young man who came to study at a mountain hermitage, hoping to find some peace. But he found the place full of irritations. One of the other students hummed while he worked. Another always took the best seat by the fire. The cook made the soup too salty. The morning bell rang far too early. Each day the young man grew more sure that he could be calm and content, if only all these people and their habits would stop disturbing him. At last he went to the old teacher and asked whether he might go and live alone in an empty hut further up the mountain, away from all the noise, so that he could finally find his peace. The teacher looked at him kindly and let him go. The young man settled into the little hut with great relief. For a few days it was pure bliss. But soon enough he noticed that the wind rattled a loose shutter through the night and would not let him rest. A steady drip came through one corner of the roof whenever it rained, and it set his teeth on edge. A bird took to singing outside his window long before he wished to wake. One morning he set his bowl down a little too hard on the stone, and it cracked, and he was startled by the flash of anger that ran through him over a simple bowl, with not a soul there to blame for it. And sitting alone in that hut, with no humming student, and no salty soup, and no early bell, he began at last to understand. The disturbance had never lived in those things. It had walked up the mountain with him, because it had always lived inside him. He had carried his own restlessness from the hermitage to the hut, and it had not stayed behind. The wind, the drip, the early bird, all of it was only knocking, just as the people had been, on a door that was rattling from the inside. He came back down the mountain before long, a little humbler and a good deal freer. This is one of the most powerful turns a person can make. To stop asking only what others are doing to us, and to begin, without harshness, to look at how we ourselves are meeting it. It is not that other people never act badly. They do, and sometimes our hurt is more than fair. But when we pour all our strength into the question of who is to blame, we give our peace away completely. We make our calm depend on everyone around us behaving exactly as we wish, which is something we can never arrange for long. Whoever blames the world for their inner weather will always be at the mercy of the world. And the world never runs out of weather. There will always be a humming neighbor, a soup too salty, a shutter loose in the wind. If our peace must wait until every last irritation has been removed, it will wait forever, because the list has no end. The young man climbed all the way up the mountain to leave his disturbances behind and found them waiting in an empty hut, because the only one that truly mattered had ridden up there in his own chest. And there is a surprising freedom waiting on the other side of this. When we begin to hold our own reactions as our own, something we can tend and come to understand rather than something forced on us from outside, we are no longer helpless. We cannot govern the humming student, or the salty soup, or the rattling wind. But how we meet these things is ours, and it has been ours all along. To own our part is not to pile blame on ourselves. It is to quietly take back our own power. None of this means pretending we are never wronged, or smiling at everything, or swallowing whatever we feel. It is something steadier than that. It is the simple recognition that the one place we always have some say is in ourselves. We do not choose the wind, but we are the door it knocks on, and a door can rattle loose, or it can sit settled in its frame. Tending that door, patiently, over the course of a life, turns out to be most of the work and most of the freedom. So we come back to ourselves, with the whole crowd that lives within us, the eager one, and the one who delays, and the one who scoffs, the harsh judge and the quick blamer, and beneath them all, the simple wish to be at peace. We do not have to win a war against any of it. We only have to meet it as we might meet a room full of tired travelers, with patience, with a little warmth, with the understanding that each of them, even the difficult ones, is only some part of us trying, in its own clumsy way, to be all right. There is room enough in us for all of them. A heart that grows large enough to hold its own contradictions finds, in the same stretch, that it has grown large enough to hold a great deal else besides. In the days ahead, there may be moments to simply notice these voices as they speak. The eager one, the hesitant one, the scoffer, the judge, the one who blames. There is no need to argue with any of them, or to drive them out, only to notice and to soften, and perhaps to say, inwardly, "Ah, there you are again," the way you might greet a face you have known for years. That small turn, from fighting ourselves toward befriending ourselves, changes more than it seems it should. To make peace with the wide world, we start by making peace with the crowd in our own heart. Be here for a moment, just as you are, with nothing to fix and nothing to send away. Let the breath be slow and easy. Once you feel settled, we will continue on. We each carry, everywhere we go, a picture of who we are. It is built up over a whole lifetime, from the things we have done and the things we have been told, and we polish it and guard it without ever quite noticing we are doing so. I am this kind of person, we think. I am clever, or I am kind, or I am capable, or I am important. And whatever shape the picture takes, we spend a surprising amount of our strength defending it. A careless word from someone can spoil an entire afternoon, not because it did us any real harm, but because it scratched the image we are forever protecting. The Buddha taught that much of our suffering rises out of clinging, out of gripping tightly to things that were never meant to be held. And of everything we clutch at, the tightest grip of all is the one we keep on the idea of our own self. Here we turn toward that grip, and toward what begins to happen when it loosens, even a little. There is a story of a proud and powerful magistrate who governed a wide province. He had heard that a wise hermit lived in the hills not far away, a man said to see straight to the heart of things, and he decided to pay him a visit. Now this magistrate was used to being received with great ceremony wherever he went. So when he reached the hermit's plain wooden gate, he handed the gatekeeper his calling card, on which were written all his titles and honors, a long and impressive list. Governor of this region, holder of that rank, bearer of this and that distinction. The gatekeeper carried the card inside. A moment later he came back out, looking embarrassed, and said, "My master says he does not know this person, and has no business with him. He asks that you kindly go on your way." The magistrate was astonished. He took the card back and stared at it, and slowly he began to understand. He drew out a brush, and one by one he crossed off every title and every honor, until nothing was left on the card but his own plain name. "Take it into him again," he said. The gatekeeper carried it inside once more, and this time the hermit himself came out, smiling, his hands open in welcome. "Ah," he said warmly, "this is the one I have been hoping to meet. Come in, and let us sit together." The hermit had no quarrel with the man himself. What he would not invite in was the great tower of titles the man had built and was hiding behind. He would happily meet a person. He had no use for a procession of honors. It is easy to smile at the magistrate, yet most of us arrive everywhere we go, carrying a card, much like his, even when no ink is written on it. We come bearing our accomplishments, our roles, our good name, all the ways we wish to be seen, and we hold them up between ourselves and everyone we meet. And here is the strange cost of it. Every image we hold up creates, in the same instant, someone on the other side who might not agree with it. If I must be seen as the clever one, then everyone cleverer becomes a quiet threat. If I must be the strong one, then every weakness of mine becomes a danger to be hidden. The very image we build in order to feel safe is what sets us at odds with half the world. And the cards we carry are not always grand titles. They can be very small and rule us all the same. I am someone who is always right. I am someone who never needs help. I am the strong one in the family, the clever one among friends, the capable one at work. Each of these is a little banner we feel we must keep flying, and the keeping of it wears on us in ways we seldom name. We turn down help we truly need, because needing help would dent the picture. We smile when we are aching, because the picture must not be allowed to crack. We carry these cards so long that we forget they were ever only cards, and we begin to believe they are the whole of who we are. Beneath all this defending lies an old fear. We sense, somewhere, that if the image were taken from us, there would be nothing left at all. So we guard it as though our life depended on it. But the fear has the truth turned backward. We are not the picture. We are the living thing the picture was only ever a rough sketch of. Letting the sketch go does not erase us. It only lets the living thing breathe. So many of our conflicts, looked at closely, are not really between two people at all. They are between two images. Two people each defending a picture of themselves, neither one quite willing to be the one who is wrong, or who gives way, or who did not know. The argument grows hot, not because the matter is so large, but because each person feels their very self is under threat. And when, by some grace, one of them sets their image down, a surprising thing happens. The quarrel has nothing left to push against, and it simply comes undone. There was never as much at stake as the two images had insisted. It would be a mistake to think this trap belongs only to the proud and the powerful. It follows us onto the spiritual path as well, and there it grows more slippery and harder to catch. For just as a person can build an image of being important, or wealthy, or admired, a person can build an image of being humble, or wise, or holy. The seeker who is proud of how little he owns has only traded one self-image for another. The robe has changed. The one wearing it, and clinging to the wearing, is the same as before. Long ago, a young man came to a monastery, burning with sincerity and determined to give himself fully to the path. And he worked at it hard. He sat longer than the others and held himself very straight while he sat, hoping someone might notice how still he had grown. He ate very little and found small ways to let it be known that he ate very little. He rose before dawn and managed to mention, here and there, how early he had risen. In his great effort to empty himself of his ego, he was quietly building the grandest ego in the whole monastery. The ego of being its finest seeker. One evening he came to the old teacher, and after a while he asked, as though only in passing, "Teacher, the others, do you think they have noticed how much my practice has deepened?" The teacher looked at him with great warmth and said nothing for a moment. "You have worked very hard," he said at last, "to let go of so much. The fine clothes, the comforts, the wish to be important in the eyes of the world. You have set down a great deal already. There is only one thing left for you to set down now, and it happens to be the heaviest of them all." "What is that?" the young man asked, leaning closer. "The one who has set all the rest down," said the teacher. "The fine seeker you are so proud of becoming. As long as there is a special someone standing here, just a little above the others, even a holy someone, the work is not yet done. The last thing to release is the one who has been doing all the releasing. This is the heart of it, and it is a turn most of us miss for a long while. We keep trying to improve the self, to decorate it, to make it finer and better and more admired, when the deeper freedom is in setting the whole weight of it down. Lao Tzu pointed straight at this. In the pursuit of learning, he said, something is gained every day. In the pursuit of the way, something is dropped every day. We are so practiced at adding, at gathering more and more skill, more praise, more proof of who we are. The path he describes runs the other direction entirely. It is a steady letting go until what remains is simple and light and free. There is something almost tender in the young seeker's trouble, and it is a trouble we all share in some shape. The moment we make a little progress, the self rushes in to take the credit and to wear that progress like a fresh feather in its cap. We grow humble, and then we grow proud of our humility. We learn to let go, and then we cling to how well we let go. The self is endlessly clever at surviving, even by dressing up as its own undoing. This is why it cannot be beaten down by force, by simply trying harder to crush it. It can only be outgrown, slowly, as we stop feeding it the constant attention it lives on. At first, all this can sound like a loss. We are so used to measuring ourselves by what we have gathered that setting things down feels like being made poorer. But it is more like a traveler easing a heavy pack off his shoulders at the end of a long day's walk. What seemed at first like losing turns out to be pure relief. The self we have carried for so many years is the heaviest load of all, and we have hauled it about so long that we no longer feel its weight until the moment it comes off, and we are amazed how light we were meant to be. Consider how much of our daily tiredness is spent in the defense of an image, the bracing whenever we are criticized, the performing whenever we are watched, the endless small adjustments to be seen exactly the way we wish to be seen. Now imagine setting even a little of that down, not having to be anyone in particular, not having to win the conversation, or be the cleverest in the room, or prove a single thing to anyone. There is a deep rest in it. A person who does not need to be somebody is suddenly free to simply be. They can be wrong without it wounding them. They can let others shine without feeling dimmed by it. They have nothing left to protect, and so there is nothing left for the world to threaten. This reaches into everything, but nowhere more than into how we are with one another. As long as we are busy managing an impression, we are never quite present with the person right in front of us. Half our attention is on them, and the other half is on the mirror, anxiously watching how we are coming across. We cannot truly listen while we are performing. But once the performance is set down, something opens. We can meet another person plainly, with nothing to prove and nothing to hide, and they feel the difference almost at once. The most healing thing we ever offer one another may simply be our own undefended presence. Watch a small child at play before the world has taught her to mind how she appears. She is wholly herself, lost in the game, with no eye on the mirror at all. She is not trying to be charming, or clever, or good. She simply is, and there is a freedom in it that we spend much of the rest of our lives trying to find our way back toward. We were each like that once, before we took up the heavy habit of being someone. The path is, in part, a long walk home to that ease. None of this means we lose ourselves or dwindle away into nothing. It is closer to the opposite. When the heavy costume of who we think we must be finally slips off, what stands there underneath is something truer and more alive than any image ever was. A stream runs most freely where the banks do not fight it. And a life runs most freely when it is no longer dammed up behind the constant defense of a self. There may be small moments, in the days to come, to taste this lightness. A chance to let a little criticism pass without rushing to defend against it. A chance to stay quiet about a good thing you have done and let it go unnoticed. A chance to say, easily and without shame, that you simply do not know. Not one of these will cost you anything real, and each one loosens, by a small degree, the grip we keep on the picture of ourselves. What flows into the space left behind is an ease that all our defending never once managed to bring. None of this is a great battle to be fought. We do not have to wage war on the self, or wrestle it to the ground, which would only be the self fighting itself once more. We have only to notice, here and there, when we are holding up a card, and to set it down for a breath, and to feel how much lighter our hands are without it. And as that defended self grows quieter, something we have been circling this whole way comes true on its own. To flow like water was never only about the world outside us. Underneath, it was always about loosening the grip of the one who stands in the middle of everything, insisting on being someone. A current moves most freely when no one is planted in the riverbed, feet dug in, demanding the water part around them. Settle here for a few breaths, with nothing to be and no one to defend. Only the breath, rising and falling on its own. We will go on again before long. If we set down the heavy images of who we think we ought to be, a question naturally rises. What is left? If I am not my titles, not my good name, not the careful picture I have spent so long defending, then who is there to be? The answer is the simplest one of all. We are left with ourselves, not the polished self we perform for others, but the plain, particular, living person underneath. And here is something to rest in. There is no single correct way to be that person. The peace we have been walking toward does not arrive in one shape only. It has worn 1,000 different faces, across 1,000 different lives, and not one of them looked exactly like the next. We come into the world already a particular shape. One person is born quick and bright, another slow and deep. One is tender, another bold, another watchful and reserved. These are not flaws to be ironed out on the road to peace. They are the very material that peace will express itself through. A calm, bold person and a calm, tender person will never look alike, and neither of them is doing it wrong. Peace does not erase our particular shape. It fills it and lets it become fully what it is. There were once 3 teachers, each of whom had found a deep stillness, and yet who could hardly have been more different from one another. The first was a large, dignified man who had spent his early years as a successful merchant before he turned to the path. There was a great solidity about him, an unhurried calm, like a mountain that has stood so long it has forgotten how to be moved. When he taught, he sat very still and spoke slowly, and his presence alone seemed to settle a room. To sit near him was to feel that nothing, anywhere, was an emergency. The second could not have been less like the first. He was a small, lively man, endlessly curious about everything under the sun. He read every notice posted on every wall. He wanted to know how things worked, what was stirring in the town, what this one thought and that one was planning. He moved quickly and spoke happily and seemed delighted by the whole passing show of the world. And yet beneath all that bright motion lay the very same depth, the same freedom, the same peace the still mountain of a man carried in his calm. The third was a small woman who lived simply in a couple of plain and shadowed rooms. She had known great sorrow in her life, more than most, and had come through it not hardened but somehow made softer. Her rooms were dim and nearly bare, and yet those who visited her often said the most surprising thing. They said that stepping through her door felt like walking into a room full of light, though no extra lamp was ever burning. What filled the room was her love. It flowed out of her without effort and without end, settling on everyone who came, and on everything past them too. 3 teachers, one still as stone, one quick and curious, one overflowing with love. If you had tried to find the single right way to be a person of peace by studying the 3 of them, you would have ended hopelessly confused, because in their manner they agreed on almost nothing. The stillness they shared had not pressed them into copies of one another. It had made each of them more fully, more freely, themselves. This is a great relief, once we let it reach us. So often we believe that to grow wiser, or calmer, or kinder, we must turn into some particular kind of person. Softer than we are, more serene than we are, more like that one figure we so admire. And so we strain against our own nature, trying to file ourselves down into a shape that was never ours to begin with. But a deep peace does not ask us to become someone else. It asks the very opposite. It asks us to become, at long last, entirely ourselves. Comparison is one of the surest thieves of peace there is. The moment we set ourselves beside another and measure, we lose either way. Either we find them better and sink into envy and a sense of lack, or we find ourselves better and swell with a pride that is just as restless. Both keep us looking sideways at everyone else, instead of resting in the one life that is actually ours. The three teachers did not measure themselves against each other. The mountain did not wish to be quicker. The lively one did not long to be more still. Each had simply stopped looking sideways, and so each was free. There is a hidden unkindness in the endless project of fixing ourselves. Beneath the wish to improve, there often sits a deep refusal to accept who we already are, a feeling that the real us is not quite acceptable and must be corrected before it can be loved. But a flower does not improve itself into being worthy of the sun. It simply opens, and the sun is already there. We do not have to become a better person before we are allowed to rest. We can rest now, as we are, and let the resting itself be where any real change gently begins. There is a story of an old and much-loved teacher who, in the evening of a long life, grew unexpectedly troubled in his heart. His students were puzzled and a little worried to find him uneasy. "Teacher," they said, "why are you troubled? You have lived so well. You have been nearly as wise as the great sages of old, nearly as kind as the most generous among them. Surely you, of all people, have nothing to fear." The old man shook his head slowly. "It is not that," he said. "I am not afraid of being asked why I was not as wise as the great sages. If they ask me that, I will have my answer ready. I was not given their wisdom, and I did the best I could with what was mine. That question does not weigh on me at all." "Then what does?" they asked him. "I am afraid of a simpler question," he said. "I am afraid I will be asked why I was not more fully myself. Why, with the single life I was given, and the one particular heart that was mine and no one else's in all the world, I spent so much of it trying to be someone other than who I was. To that question, I am not certain I have a good answer, and it may be the only question that truly matters." There is an ache in what the old teacher was naming, and many people carry some version of it. The years spent trying to be more like someone they admired. The parts of themselves they hid away because those parts did not match the picture of who they thought they ought to be. The slow tiredness of wearing a borrowed shape. And there is, on the other side of it, a rare relief that comes from being somewhere we are allowed to be simply ourselves, with someone who asks us to be nothing else. That relief is no small thing. It is a glimpse of how a whole life might feel if we granted ourselves the permission we keep waiting for someone else to hand us. There is a kind of humility hidden in this, and it is not the grim, head-bowed humility we sometimes picture. It is far lighter than that. The woman whose room seemed full of light was once asked how she managed to stay so humble, with so much love and respect flowing toward her. She seemed honestly not to understand the question, for there was no one inside her standing back to feel proud of it all, and no one to feel humble either. She had grown so empty of that defended self that there was simply no one left to take the credit. The love poured through her freely for exactly that reason, because it met nothing standing in its path. That is where the emptying we spoke of quietly leads. It is not a cold or vacant thing, this letting go of the self. It is the clearing away of all that blocked the light, so that something warm can finally pour through. The most loving people are very often the ones who have stopped being so busy with themselves. There is suddenly room in them for everyone else. We sense this in the presence of such a person, even if we have never put it into words. They are not performing their kindness, or working at being good. They have simply stopped guarding themselves so closely, and so their warmth has somewhere to flow. Near them, we find ourselves relaxing, because there is plainly nothing in them we need to manage or impress. They have no interest in our card of titles. They are content just to meet us as we are. The Buddha often reminded those who came to him how rare and precious a single human life is. To be here at all, awake, able to love and to wonder and to understand, is a chance almost beyond counting. And each of us is given exactly one such life, in exactly one shape, our own. It is a small sorrow to spend it wishing we were someone else, forever measuring ourselves against others, straining to be a kind of person we were never made to be. The invitation runs the other way. It is to live this one life as fully and as honestly as the person we actually are. This honesty is not a license to be careless with others or to call every selfish urge our true nature. When we sink deep enough beneath the defended self, what waits there is not something hard and grasping. It is softer and kinder than the surface ever was. The truest self, once uncovered, leans naturally toward warmth, just as the three teachers all, in their very different shapes, poured outward rather than in. To be fully ourselves and to be loving are not two separate roads. Far enough down, they turn out to be a single one. Long ago, Chuang Tzu wrote of the true men and women of old, the ones who had found the way. They were not grand, he said, and they did not make a show of themselves. They slept without troubled dreams and woke without dread. They ate simply and breathed deeply. They took life as it came to them and let it go again when its time had passed, without clutching and without fear. Whatever rose in them, gladness or grief, came and went as naturally as the turning of the seasons, the warmth of summer giving way to the stillness of winter and round again, all of it part of one unbroken whole. There is great comfort in that picture. We tend to fight the winters of our lives and cling to the summers, as though only the bright seasons were truly meant to be ours. But the true ones of old did not divide their lives in that way. They understood that the cold season has its own slow work to do, that rest and loss and stillness belong to a full life as surely as warmth and growth do. To let our seasons turn, without grasping at one or dreading the next, is its own deep peace. Nothing is being taken from us. The wheel is only turning as it was always meant to. That is the way of water we have been following from the very start. It was never about becoming someone remarkable. It was about returning, softly, to what we already are, beneath all the effort and the images and the striving. A river does not strain to reach the sea. It follows its own nature, bending where the land bends, and arrives without ever having hurried. We can trust our own lives in much the same way. We can stop the pushing and stop the performing and stop trying to be anyone other than the person we quietly already are. We have wandered a long road together to arrive somewhere so simple. We began with water, soft and yielding, wearing down the hardest stone without ever forcing it. We watched the grass grow without being pulled, and learned to meet a moment without piling our stories on top of it. We gave the restless mind a wider field and found a steadiness that the praise and blame of the world could not knock over. We made our peace with the crowd of voices inside us and set down the heavy image of who we thought we had to be. And every step of it was leading here, to this open and unguarded place where a person can finally rest as themselves. There is nothing you need to do with any of this tonight. Only, perhaps, to let it soften something, to let yourself be exactly as you are, with no improvement required, no one to become, nowhere else you must be. The whole long way leads, in the end, to this plain and open place. To be yourself, and to let that be enough, because it always was. So as this part of the journey comes to its close, there is nothing to carry away but this. You are allowed to be who you are. The way of water was, all along, the way home to yourself. And that self, met with a little kindness, turns out to be a fine and gentle place to live. Rest here together a while, just as we are. Nothing to reach for, nothing to mend, nowhere we need to go. And when you are ready, we will move on, gently, into the last of our time together. We have spent this time together with the way of water. As we come to the end, it helps to gather the whole of it into one simple thing, the thing that runs beneath everything else we have touched. Water does not force. It does not strain, or hurry, or fight. And still, in its own soft and patient way, it moves the entire world. It wears the sharpest stone smooth. It carves the deep canyon out of the mountain. It reaches the sea every single time, not by struggling, but by following its own nature downward, yielding wherever it must, slipping around whatever stands in its path, and never once letting go of where it is going. That is the heart of all of it. Flow like water. Stop pushing the river. Let life carry you where, somewhere deep down, it was always going to take you. So much of our weariness comes from doing the very opposite, from throwing ourselves again and again against what will not move, from gripping the outcome, forcing the moment, insisting that things be other than they are. We wear ourselves out rowing against the current, when the current was ready to carry us the whole time. To live the way of water is simply to set down the oars, now and then, and allow ourselves to be held by something larger and wiser than our own effort. And notice that water loses nothing by giving way. It bends around the rock and is still entirely itself. It pours into the low place and loses none of its nature. Yielding, for water, is never defeat. It is how the soft outlasts the hard, how that which bends is still standing long after that which would not bend has broken. This whole evening has been a slow remembering of that one truth, that there is a strength in softness which force can never reach. You may have felt this yourself in the rare moments when something came easily, a conversation that flowed without any effort, a piece of work that seemed to do itself once you stopped straining at it. A worry that came untangled the moment you stopped picking at the knot. Those moments are not simply luck. They are glimpses of what living feels like when we stop fighting it, when our own nature and the nature of things move together instead of against each other. The way of water is just choosing that a little more often and on purpose. Let us look back, softly, over the ground we have walked together. We saw that the grass grows by itself, that no one can pull the young shoots taller, that the things which matter most ripen in their own time, and our part is only to tend them with care, and then to trust and to wait. We learn that to sit quietly and do nothing is not laziness at all, but a deep faith that the right response will rise on its own when it is truly needed, the way a still pond knows, without being told, how to mirror the whole sky. We met each moment plainly, in the scene, just the scene, setting down the heavy layer of worry and story we so often heap on top of what is simply, quietly here. We came home to simplicity, to doing one thing at a time, to the plain fullness of an ordinary act met with our whole attention. The cup of tea actually tasted, the path actually felt beneath the feet. We gave the restless mind a wider field and watched it grow calm in the open, the way a creature grows calm when the fence is taken down. We found the still water within us, that steadiness which can meet praise and blame, good fortune and hard, without being toppled by any of it. We made peace with the whole crowd of voices that lives inside us, the eager one and the hesitant one alike, and laid down the long war we so often wage against our own hearts. We set down the heavy image of who we thought we had to be, and felt how much lighter the hands are without it. And at the very last, we remembered that there is no single way to be a person at peace. There is only our own way, lived honestly, as the one particular soul we happen to be, and no one else ever could. All of it, every step, was water. Softness instead of force. Trust instead of strain. Flowing instead of fighting. The same simple truth, turning to show us one face after another. And so we have come, by way of water, all the way around to rest. It is a fitting place to arrive. The whole journey, from its very first breath, was leading gently here. And perhaps that is the one thing worth carrying away from this whole evening. When in doubt, soften. When you are stuck, stop forcing. When the world turns hard and sharp against you, become like the water and find the way around what you cannot move. None of this asks anything hard of you. That is the deep mercy at the center of this path. There is nothing here to achieve, no far mountain to climb, no better self to build before you are finally allowed to rest. The peace was never somewhere up ahead, waiting to be earned. It was here the whole time, underneath all the noise and all the trying, asking only that we stop struggling long enough to feel it. A river does not have to be taught how to flow. It only has to stop being dammed. And something in us, too, already knows how to be at ease. It knows how to meet life softly, how to let the day's small troubles arrive and stay there a little while and move on again, without our clinging to a single one of them. We do not have to manufacture our peace out of nothing. We have only to stop standing in its way. This is the gift that the way of water leaves in our hands. A little less suffering, because we are no longer firing the second arrow into our own wounds. A little more presence, because we have stopped racing ahead of the moment we are actually in. A little more room for others, because we are not so busy defending ourselves. And underneath all of it, a steady current of trust. Trust that the same intelligence that grows the grass and turns the seasons and carries every river home to the sea is moving in our own lives as well, and has been all along, whether we noticed it or not. And the quiet beauty of it is that this current can be rejoined at any moment. We do not have to wait for a calm day, or an empty room, or some perfect season of life to arrive. The way of water is always right here, as near as the next breath. In the middle of a hard afternoon, in a crowded and difficult hour, a person can pause and soften and slip back into the flow that was carrying them all along. We may forget it 1,000 times over. It hardly matters. The river is endlessly patient. It waits for us without complaint, and the moment we stop fighting, we find we were in it the whole time. This trust is not something we have to force into being, any more than the river forces itself to trust the sea. It grows on its own, slowly, each time we let go and discover that we were held after all. Little by little, the letting go grows easier. The grip we have kept on everything begins to loosen, and we find we can move through our days more lightly, carried rather than carrying, trusting the ground to be there beneath each step, as it always has been. So in the days ahead, when you feel yourself tightening, pushing, forcing, you might remember the water. You might feel for the place where you are rowing hard against the current and ease the oars up out of it and let yourself be carried for a while. Not every problem must be solved tonight. Not every knot needs to be pulled tighter. Some things only loosen once we loosen first. And now, there is one last way to let the water carry us, and it is the simplest of all: to rest. Sleep itself is the purest letting go there is. No one has ever fallen asleep by trying harder. It comes only when we stop reaching for it, when we loosen our hold on the day and let ourselves be lowered, softly, into the dark. There is something fitting in ending the evening here. All this time we have spoken of not forcing, of letting things unfold in their own season, of trusting a current larger than ourselves. And now the body asks for exactly that. To sleep is to practice the whole of it at once, to lay down every effort and be carried through the night into the morning without doing a single thing to make it happen. So let the day you have lived begin to drift away behind you. There is nothing left to do here. Nowhere you need to be. No part of any of this you must hold on to or remember. Like the water itself, these words can simply move through you now, leaving behind whatever was meant to stay and carrying the rest of it gently out and away. Let your attention settle, softly, into the body. There is nothing to change, only to notice, and to let each part loosen a little more than before. Let it begin high up, in the small muscles of the face, the ones that work all day without ever being asked to. Let the forehead smooth. Let the space between the eyebrows open and soften. Let the eyes grow heavy and still, as if they are sinking gently back into rest. Let the jaw unclench and the tongue rest soft in the mouth, and the whole face grow smooth and untroubled. Let that softness pour down into the neck and into the shoulders, and feel the shoulders drop away from the ears, a little lower than you usually allow them. So much of the day is carried there, in the shoulders. Let them put it down now. Let the ease run down through the arms, past the elbows, into the wrists and the hands, until even the fingers are loose and open and still, with nothing left to grip. There is no rush in any of this. Let each part take its own time. The body knows how to let go, if only we stop interrupting it. So give it these few unhurried moments and let the loosening deepen on its own, layer beneath layer, further than the busy day ever lets it go. Let the breath move down into the chest and let the chest soften around it, rising a little, falling a little, all on its own. Let the belly grow soft, no longer held in, simply lifting and settling with each slow breath, like the easy swell of calm water. Let the long muscles of the back release into whatever holds you, one by one, sinking, growing heavy and warm. Let the hips soften. Let the legs grow heavy, the thighs, the knees, the lower legs, all the way down to the ankles and the feet. Let the feet fall open. Let the whole body, from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet, give its full weight to whatever is beneath it, held and supported, with nothing left to do and nothing left to carry. And as the body settles, you may notice a soft warmth beginning to spread through it. The simple warmth of a creature safe and at rest. Let it spread. Let it move through the chest and the limbs and gather gently in the belly, the warmth of being held, of having nowhere to go and nothing to do. This is the body remembering how to rest, a thing it has always known, beneath all the years of hurry. Now simply rest with the breath a while. There is no need to deepen it or change it in any way, only to follow it, softly, as it comes and as it goes. Each breath in, a small and quiet arrival. Each breath out, a letting go, a sinking deeper, a little more of the day, dissolving and drifting away. Breathing in, the body is here. Breathing out, the body grows softer. There is nowhere to get to. There is only this slow tide, moving in you, moving on its own. If it helps, you might let each out-breath carry a single soft word. Breathing out, soft. Breathing out, here. Breathing out, rest. Or no words at all, only the long, slow fall of the breath, lowering you down and gently down. With each breath out, a little more of the day can leave you. The things said and the things left unsaid. The things done and the things still undone. The small worries you have carried from room to room without ever setting down. None of them have any claim on you now. They can wait until morning. For this little while there is nowhere to be and nothing to carry, and the only task, if it can even be called a task, is to let yourself rest. If thoughts are still drifting through the mind, that is perfectly all right. You do not have to chase them, and you do not have to push them away. Let them float past like leaves carried on the surface of a slow stream, each one drifting into view and then drifting on again, while you rest quietly on the bank and watch the water move. You are not the passing thoughts. You are the still awareness behind them, wide and calm and untroubled, the deep water under all the ripples. Let the thoughts come and let them go, and let yourself sink beneath them into something quieter and more peaceful than any of them. And let yourself sink now a little further into rest. Feel how the body is held completely without any effort of its own. Beneath you, the steady ground, holding everything, asking nothing in return. You do not have to hold yourself up tonight. You do not have to keep anything together, or watch over anything, or be ready for anything at all. You can let go all the way and be carried as a river is carried by the gentle sloping of the land down toward the sea. The night asks nothing of you. The darkness is not empty, but soft and full and kind, a wide still room made for resting in. Let the whole weight of you be received by it. You are not alone in this resting. All across the turning world, countless others are laying down their day at this very hour, sinking into the same soft dark, carried by the same slow tide. You are part of something vast and gentle and very old, the long rhythm of rest that has cradled every living thing since the very beginning. Let it cradle you now like a small boat settling onto still water. Feel yourself growing heavier and softer with each breath, sinking by slow degrees, as warmth spreads through still water, as evening settles over a quiet valley. There is no edge you must cross, no moment you have to reach for. Sleep will come in its own time, unhurried, rising around you like a slow tide, while you do nothing at all but rest here and let it lift you. And when the morning comes, it will come on its own, the way it always has, without your needing to reach for it. The light will return. The breath will still be moving. There will be time enough then for whatever the new day holds. But none of that belongs to this moment. This moment is only for rest. For now, you have permission to set the whole world down. The list of things to do, the people to tend, the problems to turn over and over, all of it can rest in the dark beside you, untouched until you wake. None of it will come to harm while you sleep. The world has turned through countless nights without your watching over it, and it will turn gently through this one too. So you can loosen your hold on all of it and let your only concern for these last few moments be the slow and easy falling of the breath. There is nothing to force now, and nothing to fix, and no one you need to be. Only this breath, and then the one after it, each one carrying you a little further into rest. Whatever this day asked of you, however it went, easily or hard, you are allowed, in this moment, simply to be here, and to let that be more than enough. You have done enough. You have been enough all along. There is nothing more required of you tonight. Not tonight, and perhaps far less often than you have believed. So much of the striving was never needed. You can lay it down now, all of it, and trust that you will still be here when the light returns, and that it will be enough, because it always was. Let everything be still. Let the water settle. Let yourself, at last, be carried. Flow like water, soft and unhurried, and trusting of the long way down. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Midnight Monk.